Hey y'all, welcome to my kitchen here at the Farmer's Table. My name is Jess. If you are new here, I'm so glad that you're here. And if you are not new here, welcome back. I'm also glad that you're here. Today I am going to be sharing one of my favorite summer recipes with y'all. This is the quintessential taste of summer because it uses lots of basil. Today we are making pesto sauce for pasta, but you can use it in lots of different ways. I'm gonna go ahead and start shredding some Parmesan cheese while we chat about this. I admittedly very rarely shred cheese. I have way too many kids for that. That's a job that gets delegated in my kitchen most of the time while I work on other things. So I love pesto sauce, and I will make a lot of it whenever the basil is coming in really heavily. I plant lots of basil plants in my garden. I just recently did a Basil 101 gardening video over on my other channel, Roots and Refuge, if you are trying to grow basil and need some tips and help with that. Basil is one of those plants that the more you pick it and prune it, the more you're going to get because it makes it much bushier and keeps it from going to seed. So I harvest my basil weekly, and that means that weekly I've got to find a way to use a whole lot of basil or else it wilts and goes bad. So I dry a lot of it. I'll do it in a dehydrator or in the freeze dryer, but one of my favorite ways to preserve basil is to make pesto sauce, and I just put it in little containers with lids, plastic containers with lids, and I put it in the freezer, and it lasts in the freezer for several months. I usually freeze it and then wait until the basil is no longer growing, and then we start pulling it out of the freezer and using it. When the basil's still growing, we just make it fresh and eat it fresh. As long as your container is good and sealed, you wouldn't want to use like a real flimsy container with a flimsy lid. You could even put it in freezer bags. It does stay good in the freezer, and whenever you thaw it out, it is very similar to fresh. Maybe the texture changes a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, usually when we're eating it, it's the dead of winter, and I'm just so happy to be eating anything with basil. So my kids just got back from swimming. You may hear them. I actually was starting this afternoon because they were out of the house. I figured it'd be easier to shoot a video. But I'm actually making this for dinner tonight. So what I'll do with this pesto sauce is once we're done with it, I'll just stick it in the fridge until tonight. But I'm going to marinate some chicken with olive oil, lemon juice, paprika, garlic powder, salt, pepper. Let it sit for an hour or so in that marinade, and then just grill it on the Blackstone. And I'll boil some gluten-free pasta, toss the pasta in the pesto sauce, and then top it with the chicken, and that's what we'll have for dinner. But another really great way to use pesto sauce is as a spread on sandwiches. You can put it in wraps. You can mix it with like more olive oil and a little heavier lemon juice and mix it all together and kind of make a salad dressing. I mean, pesto is just so versatile and so delicious. All right, now I am making a pretty good sized batch of this today. You could definitely cut this down if you don't want to make a whole lot, but as I said, it freezes well. And a lot of times I will make a batch that's way bigger than this if I'm harvesting the whole garden's worth of basil at once. I have my food processor out for this. More traditionally, you can make pesto in like a big mortar and pestle, but I am usually making a lot of this, so I usually just go ahead and go with the food processor. I am also making my pesto with walnuts. More traditionally, pesto is made with pine nuts, but pine nuts are really expensive. And for me, what really makes pesto taste great is the basil, the Parmesan, the olive oil. And though pine nuts are very lovely, I don't find that walnut pesto, I don't find that it detracts from it. And with how much money you save in making it with walnuts, to me it's worth it. Admittedly, I don't ever measure this, but I have come up with some roundabout measurements to share with y'all today. First, we're going to start with about a cup of walnuts. If you would like to deepen the flavor of these, you can always toast them first. I usually just do them raw. And with the nuts, I want to go ahead and add about 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. You can always go heavier on the garlic. I will not judge you at all. I love garlic. Usually whenever I read a recipe and it recommends an amount of garlic, I'm always gonna double it. Sometimes I'll go as much as like 4 or 5 times. Whenever somebody gives like a really small amount of garlic on a recipe, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Like, come on. This is actually an elephant garlic clove. It's really large. It's gonna have a milder flavor. I put a handful of regular garlic cloves in there also. Next, I've got a 1/4 cup of lemon juice. That's about 1 or 2 squeezed fresh lemons, depending on how juicy they are. And I'm gonna put in a good pinch of salt. Parmesan is a pretty salty cheese, so I don't ever give measurements of salt just because I don't know you like that. So we measure with our heart here. All right, so lemon juice, garlic, nuts, salt, pepper. Right, let's pulse this. Alright, I just pulsed it a handful of times. I don't want it super like pasty or anything. I just want a nice fine chop on those nuts, and I don't want any big offensive chunks of garlic. Now from here, I'm going to put 4 cups of basil in. As I said, this is making a pretty good bit of pesto. If you have any really large stems in your basil, go ahead and pull them off. I thought I got them all, but I found that one. If you were store buying basil, you may want to make smaller batches of this, but if you're growing it in your garden, you're probably just as overwhelmed with it as I am. I posted a video a couple weeks ago for basil tea, which is another way to use a lot of basil. All right, we're gonna pulse this basil. I'm gonna pause for a moment and scrape the sides down. And now we're going to add in our Parmesan. This is about a cup of freshly shredded Parmesan. I buy this at Costco. This is an unopened one. I was finishing one that we had left over in a bag. This is the best price I have found for 24-month aged Parmesan. It's like the best Parmesan I've found affordably. So it's one of the things I always pick up when I'm at Costco. Alright, so we've mixed that, and now we need olive oil. We're going to put about 1/2 cup of olive oil in here. This does come down to preference a little bit, how runny you want your pesto. So I personally like it a little bit thicker if we're going to use it as a spread on like sandwiches and wraps. And then I typically will go a little bit more on the oil to make a smoother sauce whenever I'm going to toss it with pasta. But I'm going to pulse and just begin drizzling the oil in. I'm going to pause and scrape the sides down. You might not have to do this so much. My food processor's a little on the large side, so things tend to run up the sides. Alright. Let me see here. I'm going to do a quick little taste test. Man, nailed it. Don't you love it when you get it right on the first try? I am going to pulse this a few more times because there's a little bit of unincorporated oil. So here we have our pesto sauce. I tend to make pesto a little on the cheesier side. You could cut the cheese in half. I put a cup in. You could do as little as 1/2 cup with 4 cups of basil, but I like it like this, especially, well, I just like it like this. I'm kind of of the mind that cheese is always good. So I get these containers at the restaurant supply store. It's about an hour away from my house. I have to go into like the city to go there. But these are restaurant containers. If you've ever worked in food service, you're very familiar with drinking water out of these. These are great for freezing things. A lot of times whenever I make broth or sauces or things like this. I love canning. I love the ease of canning, but I feel like freezing has its place too. I think it really helps hold the flavor of things whenever you freeze them. You don't lose as much of that, as well as you don't lose any nutrition to a long high heat process. In freezing pesto, I can pretty much decide in the afternoon that I want to make it for dinner. Pull the container out, let it sit on the counter until it thaws, and it doesn't require any cooking. I just have to cook pasta and, you know, toss the sauce with the pasta, then that heats it up. All right, there we have it. Not quite a quart of sauce, but pretty close. I could have added more olive oil to this even and made it even thinner, and I would have obviously had more volume, but I am very happy with this. It doesn't look like much, but I promise it's delicious. I hope this helps you guys make something delicious with your basil harvest. Tell me, what do you like to do with your pesto? I know there's lots of things that you can do to mix them up. What kind of nuts do you like to use? I've played with this a lot. You can actually make a really great pesto out of carrot tops. You can use pistachios. If you don't do nuts, you can use hemp hearts. You have lots of options. It's the same general idea, and I've really never met a pesto sauce I didn't like. So I hope you love it as much as I do. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I bless you. Until next time.